fight some of the largest, most hazardous fires in the world. Infernos that defy the skills and means of most firefighters. These are blazes that rage with their own rules, their own dangers, their own deadly surprises.
It was almost like, I'd say, close to being in hell. It was the hottest I've ever been.
You see a person burn up. It's not a pretty sight.
You know, I could lose my brother and my son at one time.
The bottom line is we could die doing this.
The few who dare cheat death for a living.
They looked at us like cowboys, like renegades, like show-offs.
Where other people might feel that you're crazy, you're nuts, you know, you have a death wish, it's not like that. You have a job to do, and you just love doing your job.
The reality of this risky business demands both brains and bravado.
You have to put fire out. That's why people hire us to put fire out. If it was easy, they would have other people do it.
Nearly 100 firefighters die each year. Some to a notorious kind of fire few have the skill and training to fight. These are industrial fires. Massive infernos, fueled by oil, gasoline, and other flammable liquids. They are not extinguished easily, burning hotter and longer than almost all other fires. They are also explosive, prone to flash from dangerous to catastrophic in seconds. In a world where fuel is part of everyday life, industrial disaster is an ever-present threat. And the specialty of an elite breed of firefighter. Several weeks a year, a few of their number play instructor at TEAX, Texas Engineering Extension Service. Here, firefighters from around the world come to learn the secrets of fighting some of the most dangerous fires on Earth. Expert in this field is a 56-year-old Texan, Dwight Williams, head of world-renowned Williams Fire and Hazard Control.
In our business, fire is mesmerizing, even to us that handle it. It's beautiful. It's like a dragon. Your job is to get the poison in the dragon's mouth. Get it in its belly and kill it.
Instructing rookies how to do just that is key to this exercise.
What we have here is a marine project, and this afternoon we're just going to run these guys through their final practical examination, which basically puts them in the same scenarios that they've practiced all week, only we put it together and give them a full-blown incident. The scenario will be that this ship is tied to berth, a fire ensues, we have a good pressure fire on the manifold. The tank hold that is exposed here simulates a deck cover blown off and the cargo space is open and it goes to fire as well.
Ship fires pose extra trouble. Fuel is everywhere and seemingly inexhaustible.
Push that fire back now!
Mere water won't do. Fighting these fires takes special chemicals, know-how, and discipline.
You gotta get that hole too. Okay. Hold what you got, No.
These exercises are designed not just to teach, but to forge the firefighter to take on some of the most brutal of fights. Dwight Williams knows the drill.
The way you make a precious stone, a diamond, is with heat and with pressure. So you put them in a heat, you put the pressure on them, and you get a precious stone. If you don't do that, you just get a rock.
When they come to a school like Texas A&M Annual School, they'll learn in a controlled atmosphere whether or not they can really do this work comfortably without hurting themselves or someone else. And I think that's probably the most valuable thing that they can teach them, because they just can't build a fire big enough and bad enough to make it totally realistic.
These men aspire to succeed in a field where firefighting has long suffered dismal failure, according to David White, publisher of Industrial Fire World magazine.
Believe it or not, I'd say 20 years ago, if we had a tank fire, just a tank fire, and I was just an 80-foot diameter tank, which is a small one by today's standards, the chance of putting that tank out was almost zero. If it was bigger than 80 foot, 120, 150 foot, it was almost guaranteed it was going to burn the ground.
Industrial fires often burned until the fuel ran out. The cost to business, the environment, and human health was staggering. But by the turn of the 21st century, that old story had changed. August 1999. In Wortham, Texas, an oil pipeline explodes into flames and burns out of control for several days, overwhelming local firefighters. Specialists are called in. They put out the fires in 3 hours. May 2000, Eunice, Louisiana. A chemical freight train derails, setting tank cars of hazardous chemicals ablaze. Others are set to explode. The town is evacuated. But experts arrive, and in a few hours the fires are extinguished, a major crisis averted. September 1999, Wesley, California. When lightning ignites a dump of over 5 million tires, experts estimate it will take months to extinguish. The pros are called in, and the fire is out in a little over 3 weeks. All 3 incidents and dozens more are the handiwork of Dwight Williams and his family of firefighters.
And we expect more out of family than we do anybody else. Being a family member might help you get a job, but it will not help you keep it.
Chauncey Naylor is both firefighter and family. A son-in-law to Dwight, he joined the team in 1996.
People say be careful what you wish for, but this one's right on target for me. When I had that opportunity, I jumped on it. The risk is what entices you to do it.
It's a different discipline. So you do the job. Now, you don't do it stupid. You evaluate the risk. But there's always a risk.
Very nicely done, gentlemen.
What once seemed impossible, Dwight and his family have made possible, developing both the technique and technology to tame these blazes. But the battle is renewed with every fire. Each call could be their last, as their methods face larger and more dangerous hazards in a deadly game that can sometimes demand the ultimate price.
There's been people that have lost relatives or lost friends in fires. Most of the companies that do what we do have. We've been very blessed we haven't done that. That's done by being very observant, very deliberate, at times being aggressive.
With rare footage taken by the firefighters themselves, viewers will bear witness as the hazards mount.
You're there.
And the Williams put life and limb on the
I'm
line.
getting hot. I'm out of here.
On June 26, 1999, Dwight's team is called to Amelia, Louisiana. Like a fast-leaking tire, a crippled natural gas well under more than 10,000 pounds of pressure spews explosive vapors into the air. The Williams' job, to disperse the hazardous fumes while a crew moves in to patch the well. Before they can start, a lightning storm forces the crews to evacuate. One spark changes the Williams mission.
The well ignited. The whole sky turned basically orange. Now it's not just vapor mitigation, it's a firefight. We got out there, the derrick, it lasted about 18 minutes before the heat just melted it over. It looked like a pile of about half-cooked spaghetti.
The tall spire was now a melted mountain of steel. The drill stem that had been twisted down into the earth was now dislodged. Like a giant blowtorch, it was shooting fire into the air.
Pressure fires can be controlled a couple of different ways. You can obviously go turn a valve off. Well, if on a big tower, there is no valve. You got a pipe, maybe it's a 6-inch pipe or a 3-inch pipe or 2-inch pipe, that's fed from the tower, and there's no valve between the tower and it.
Dwight's men need to find another way. The fire must be knocked out at its source, the well hole, but the wreckage gives no clear shot. Using enough water to fill a swimming pool every 60 seconds, the team blasts back the flames to protect workers cutting away the tangled heap. It's a battle that rages around the clock, day after day, exhausting the men in shifts.
Or the noise is so tremendous. The incredible thing about the roar was that you could hear so many other things within it. You could hear things changing as it picks up different things out of the reservoir, whether it picks up mud or if it picks up water, it changes the sound. The noise is so loud and deep that it just thumps your chest. You know, it's like standing between two race cars on a drag strip when they take off. It's just a tremendous, tremendous sound. We communicated primarily with hand signals and writing notes to each other.
Then, on day 7, a break. The well hole collapses, a natural valve that cuts off the gas supply. Though the fire is out, the Williams know they can't count on luck next time. They head home to search for answers to issues they have encountered, part of the constant honing that's key to their success. "20 miles east of Beaumont, Texas, lies the home and world headquarters of Williams Fire and Hazard Control. For 20 years, Dwight's sister Randy has managed this front of the fire wars.
If you expect firefighters to fight fire, then you need someone that knows enough about the firefighting that can handle the government officials and handle the management team and keep them apprised of the situation. And I play that role, and I enjoy that role. We all thrive on stress, obviously, so that's part of my stress.
Her work leaves Dwight to his passion, figuring out how to better fight industrial fires.
That's the purpose of doing it, using it like a fog machine. We've never done this before. I can't wait to find out how it's going to work. Powder hits, it can hit that plate.
Fire's ingredients are simple: just oxygen, a fuel, and heat. Eliminate one of the three, and the fire is out.
Fire could be explained as either combustible or flammable. And if it's flammable, that means that in a common, everyday environment, the product yields enough vapor to support combustion. Now, many of us burn wood in our fireplaces. You have to heat the wood up before it yields the vapor to burn.
The dynamics of pressure fires require more than water to put them out. Firefighters mix through the nozzle a dry chemical agent that helps interrupt the chain reaction that keeps the flame burning. But the chemical can only work if it gets to the fire. The problem, the powdery agent was white and hard to distinguish from the water. To fight pressure fires better, Dwight needed to know where the chemicals were concentrated in the flow.
What we were looking for was being in big fires. We knew that in the heat of battle, it's difficult to find the dry chemical. Is it getting where it needs to be?
Dwight and engineers from Ansel Incorporated added a dye to the chemical, vastly improving their ability to aim. His refinements never surprised firefighter Jerry Kraft.
A lot of people wonder how Dwight Williams does the things. It's not magic. There's no trickery to it. He's a good team player, and he knows how to put together a team. As long as you have the right team there, you can pretty much accomplish a lot of things.
Yeah.
All right, did good, guys. Did good. Did y'all a little warm?
Yeah. Didn't feel a thing.
It didn't feel anything, did you?
The advancement is just one of the latest inventions of dozens attributed to the Williams family. Like foams to smother flames, powerful, sophisticated monitor nozzles, and other high-tech devices. All would become weapons in an industry long desperate for solutions. After the start of the oil industry in America in the late 1800s, came the advent of large, difficult petroleum fires. Water proved of little use alone. Flammable liquid fires burned so hot that most of the water turned to steam. Fire brigades often stood helpless watching oil fields go up in flames. The industry would have more luck attacking the flames by cutting off the oxygen supply. Experimenting with thick and costly foam compounds, they tried to smother the fire. But getting the heavy foam to the flame created new problems, until a young engineer came on the scene, a man instrumental in developing the delivery systems that would ultimately save lives and the environment. This was Les Williams, Dwight's father, a man baptized to fire at an early age. As a sailor aboard an aircraft carrier in 1945, 20-year-old Les Williams would witness one of the unique horrors of the war in the South Pacific, a kamikaze attack. The explosion and fire would kill 25 of his fellow sailors and wound 100 more. That night, Les was transformed from sailor to firefighter, suffering third-degree burns. Those wounds would heal, but in the experience, Les would find his life's passion, one that would change firefighting forever.
He was really the man that started this part of the industry. He was the red-adair of the flammable liquid firefighting. He taught that to my brother. And when my brother goes to a fire now, he does the same thing.
My dad was an inventor. He was the kind of person that could look at what I needed and I could tell him what I needed. He'd have a drawing by the time we got home on a napkin.
They would go to a fire and they would figure out that, the nozzles we have didn't have the reach we need. It didn't have the volume. He invented the technology and made it work to make it safer. And as Dwight today will tell anyone, the safest protection from a fire is distance. And that's what his technology allows you to do, is it enables us today to be able to control these monsters.
After an early career working for refineries and oil companies, Les joined his son's team, a partnership that lasted until his death in 1993. In that time, they would make storage tanks a Williams specialty. Along America's Gulf Coast, storage tanks dot the landscape by the thousands, filled with crude oil and some of the world's most flammable, most dangerous liquids. In the past, when they caught fire, they were nearly impossible to put out. The Williams family would risk their lives figuring out how to better the odds. When the entire surface of one of these tanks is ablaze, firefighters face an inferno that will continually reignite no matter how much water is applied. The trick is to keep extinguished areas from reigniting. The Williams strategy: attack with continuous volumes of foam at an angle that creates a growing, smothering blanket.
The purpose of foam is basically just to build a barrier between the fuel surface and the atmosphere above it. It's putting a lid on top of the flammable liquid. And the way that the foam works, when it comes out of the nozzle, it entrains a little bit of air and allows it to float on top of the surface.
As the area or footprint of foam slowly grows, the area of fire shrinks until snuffed out. But But tank fires come in other varieties. A notorious one finds opportunity in the floating roof. It prevents space where explosive vapors can build, but has a vulnerable spot, the rubber seal.
The seals that are maintained around the edges that wipe up and down the outer shell of the tank, they sometimes get compromised and the vapors are allowed to escape. Many of the seal fires that we see are started by bad weather, by lightning, by static electricity, but primarily lightning strikes.
When a seal catches fire, it becomes a nightmare. Fed like a wick from below, it will only succumb to concentrated foam, methodically applied.
In the old days, we'd get on there, we'd walk inside, down the ladder, on top of the floating roof that was floating on gasoline or crude oil, and we'd put the fire out with dry chemical extinguisher. My wife saw that happen on television in the very early days. I come home, she was telling me, "You're not going to believe there was two fools on top of a floating roof tank." And I never told her it was me. And when you get off, sometimes your shoes look like melted duck's feet. You realize you don't have to walk on something that could sink instantly or pieces of it blow apart. You realize, we need to minimize the risk here.
We knew that we needed something up there that could be secured on the tank.
It was time to head for the shop. Today, Doug Daspit, also Dwight's son-in-law, oversees a team of dozens who build the equipment the Williams firefighters depend on.
I get a purchase order in from Betty, John, Kathy, someone in that nature from the front office. At that point, it's a piece of paper. Okay, my job is to make it become that.
The Williams manufacturing team produces equipment ordered by refineries around the world.
We've got an excellent support team, from our engineering staff to our machinists to our fabricators, craftsmen, assemblers. The guys are putting their mark on, the best equipment manufactured.
Based on a prototype, Doug Daspit would create overnight a device that would be named for him, the Daspit tool. It would be put to the test on July 24, 2000. Williams responds to another seal fire on a 100-foot, almost 30-meter in diameter tank in Sealy, Texas. Clear from the firefighters' video, walking on the floating roof was out of the question.
The rubber seal that goes around the circumference of the lid or the roof, the floating roof, has burned away and is now exposed. The crude oil in that area, and that's where it's catching the air, that's where it's burning. A seal fire left alone will burn a long, long time. The biggest motivator to put it out is environment. We don't want any smoke in the air. This particular town on that fire had been evacuated. It had now been burning some 11 hours. Their biggest question for us is, when can you put this fire out?
70 rungs up, Chauncey headed for the platform of the crude tank containing 80,000 barrels of hot oil. Flames jumped 20 feet above the seal.
We actually rigged up on it, got foam flowing, and they ran about 10 minutes while we continued rigging the Daspit tool. And then as you see us bring it into the tank, from that point on, if you count, the fire is out in less than 2 minutes, and we never left the platform.
Thanks to the Daspit tool, an important advance name for one son-in-law protects the life of the other.
The Daspit tool. A versatile piece of equipment, can be used all over the place, but how do I feel about it? That's my daddy's name, okay? There it is. That's how I feel about it. Okay.
Williams had proved it could put out a seal fire from a safer distance, but the contest had only begun. Soon, they will be asked to take on a tank many times larger than the Sealy tank, an ultimate test for the skill of any industrial firefighter. June 7, 2001, 1 p.m. A brutal tropical storm batters America's Gulf Coast. While those in Texas and Louisiana fight flooding, the fierce weather brings other worries. Days of rain have broken the seals on a dozen tanks, sinking the protective roofs, exposing volatile vapors to the environment. It's a script for disaster refinery fire chiefs like J.R. Chittister of Orion know too well.
You can have bad weather come in. You can have the possibility of a sunken roof. You could have one of your lightning strikes for a seal fire, or you could get your worst case scenario, which is a full involved tank fire.
Lightning strikes at 1:30 p.m. The horizon explodes 10 miles west of New Orleans, Louisiana. A gigantic tank fire rages at the Orion Norco refinery. Now, with the full attention of the media, this was a disaster like no other. At 270 feet, over 80 meters in diameter, containing about 300,000 barrels of fuel, Louisiana was witnessing the largest tank fire the world has ever seen.
My problem was I had a fire in my refinery, and my bosses wanted me to make this problem go away.
For the industry, this is a nightmare come true. The Orion fire chief knows early his crew needs help. Minutes after the eruption, the phone rings at the Williams Southeast Texas office. Randy Williams takes the call.
When the client first gets on the phone with me, you always ask, what is the emergency? If it's a tank fire, are there any process units involved? Are there any other tanks in jeopardy? What is the product? What is the size of the tank? What is the depth of the fuel? What's the closest water supply? What equipment do you have available? What foam do you have available? So there's a lot of questions that go into it.
Before the day is out, Dwight will face a demon he has spent his career preparing for: a fully involved jumbo tank fire.
When the information came in on the Orion fire and the diameter of the tank was confirmed to be a 270, knowing that everyone in the fire industry all had already proclaimed that this tank fire could not be extinguished. Could not be. There's always a concern.
The oil company doesn't want to hear that, I believe this is going to be very hard and dangerous. I mean, that's why they called. Because that's what they had. So you do the job. I felt like I should leave immediately and go help the fire chief manage the risk there.
2 p.m. at Williams headquarters. Randy assesses the monster that awaits the crew and some of what they'll need to slay it.
I can tell about how much hose it's going to take, whether it's going to be 5-inch hose, if we're going to need the other big equipment, just by the types of fires.
Challenged by flooded highways and closed airports, Randy must calculate how to move men and equipment almost 300 miles to the Orion refinery in Louisiana. Knowing the status of every piece of their multi-million-dollar inventory falls on the shoulders of Randy's 24-year-old son, Jason.
If the equipment doesn't work, we cannot put the fire out. The equipment has to work. Our pumps have to work. Our guns have to work. If it doesn't work, it's my fault. I'm the fall guy. Everything has to be ready to go day to day.
But effective extinguishment can come with a hefty price tag. John Morris, firefighter and 18-year employee, knows the bottom line.
When we are called for an emergency situation, for example, a storage tank fire at a refinery, this is going to cost money. The foam concentrate. This is a special concentrate that is made for us by Ansel. The cost on that for a 265-gallon tote is a little over $7,000. And as I said, we have to move this equipment. That cost. We also have our firefighters. And really, what they have to sell is themselves and their knowledge. That cost.
We've had oil companies, when we present them with a bill, tell the fire chief, go buy the boys dinner on the oil company. This is fair.
If it seems like the fees are very high, think again about that 200-plus foot diameter of refined gasoline. What is it worth? Is it worth $500,000 or $700,000 to extinguish that fire? Or would it be more economically feasible to let it burn and lose millions?
You want them to be pleased, but not thrilled. If you're thrilled, then I've left too much money on the table, and I will likely not stay in business. And if I don't stay in business, who loses? You know, ultimately, it's the oil company.
Refinery fire chiefs from around the country regularly count on Dwight and his team for backup.
It's very comforting to know that you can pick up a phone. You can talk through your problem. It could be a problem that you've never had before, but it's possibly they've had. So it's something that you can work through. And naturally, if things really start getting out of hand, they can be on a plane very quickly and be standing right next to you.
Anything we can do for you, I'll do it.
The fires that I've been involved with them, it's like, okay, let's get the people that need to make the decisions. Let's go in a room, let's get around a table, and let's see what we can do with this thing. And I think that's one of the things that makes him a leader.
We're not playing with cookies in an oven. We're playing with huge volumes of flammable liquids and flammable gases and poison gases. And what we have to do is we have to be mentally disciplined to do our job and to think about those hazards.
In the middle of chaos, he's cool as a cucumber. You have to be in that type of environment because people looking to you for help and guidance. He does not get flustered. He does not give the impression that he's scared. And that's a tremendous comfort to the people that he's assisting.
That's his main focus, on making sure that it's done right. I think he knows that his reputation's on the line, so why he takes his time and gets it done right.
While professionals with a reputation at stake, they are also a family about to be exposed to incredible risk.
If something catastrophic had happened here, while they were at a fire, if they happen to have an explosion or something to wipe out 4 or 5 of the firefighters, these aren't wiping out Joe, Bill, Bob, and Sam. These are going to be the sons, the son-in-laws, the daddy. So, I mean, they got a lot to lose here. And I don't know that anyone would like to have to go to tell Ray Marie, his wife, hey, Dwight got killed in this fire today. Or to, you know, to Randy and say, hey, your son ain't coming home. He got killed in that fire today.
I could lose 2 men in my life, my brother and my son, at one time. And that's scary. But in the same token, if it happens, it's because that's what God willed. It's not because they did something wrong.
Ahead of the rest of the crew, Dwight, Chauncey, and firefighter Eric Laverne strike out for the refinery.
We're going through that in the truck and talking back and forth. What can we do? What can we do to make it better? We got one shot at this. We got one opportunity. And if we fail, like I said, there's never been a tank of that size even to catch fire.
Looking back, Williams firefighter Jerry Kraft had one fact in mind.
I think the largest prior to this particular tank was a 180-foot diameter tank that Williams Fire and Hazard Control successfully extinguished a few years back.
As night begins to fall, the Williams team approaches the refinery. In his 25 years of fighting fires, Glenn Durham has never seen anything like what awaited at Norco.
It was a very big fire. It was the kind of fire that does get your attention. And Jason's comments were, I won't tell you everything he said, but basically he thought it was 2 tanks. I said, no, it's not. I said, you gotta remember, this is a 270.
Refinery and municipal firefighters have been hosing and cooling the surrounding area all day, awaiting the arrival of Williams. The intensity of the radiating heat has ignited trees and threatens nearby tanks.
See, we got there about 6:30. We had to wait until all of this equipment could be moved to these cranes and positioned and hoses laid. We had to wait till about 30,000 gallons of foam got there.
As they prepare the gear, Dwight receives troubling news from Orion Fire Chief J.R. Chittister.
The tank itself started turning cherry red that you could see through. We were trying to cool it, but the tank started folding down on the back side, the north side of it. And we were doing everything possible to try to contain this thing.
There's a tendency to cool steel on a storage tank burning. And it really does very little good until you're ready to put it out. So that's a misgiving. That's a common practice in our industry. And it causes the steel to draw and pull in, and eventually it will tear.
If they wait too long, the folding metal could make their task far more difficult. Eventually, the tank could split and engulf the team in a wave of burning gasoline. Dwight needs a closer look at the enemy.
People say, where are you going, Dwight? I said, I'm going to go get acquainted with a fire. If you think of a fire as a living, breathing, angry dragon, you have to put the poison in the dragon's mouth to kill it. So you look for the mouth. You also look for what can hurt you. Where's the dragon's teeth or his tail that can take your people out or embarrass you or both?
Once we got there, Dwight got everybody together, started giving different individuals different tasks, and he asked me to find out how much foam was on site. How much did we have there? How many gallons of it?
Getting foam trucks in position required some of the men to pass within 100 feet of the glowing tank.
When you drive past there and you got the windows rolled up in your truck and your PBIs are smoking from the heat, you sweating.
Dwight's plan, attack with a mix of nearly 800,000 gallons, over 3 million liters of foam and water.
But my job initially was to stage the guns. I was to put them in place. Dwight and I discussed it. Dwight told me basically where he wanted them.
My main role on the Orion fire was to handle the large, myself and Jerry Kraft, the large Bigfoot mont that we use.
Once we're set up and all the water was flowing and we knew we had the pressure and the volume we needed and the foam was ready to go, my job was simply to man that gun, one of 2 guns on the job, and just watch Dwight. Watch him work.
Dozens of refinery and municipal firefighters will be critical to any success in the coming hours. Manning the pumps and preparing the foam.
We had to get pumps to take suction. We had to get the pressure at the guns that was required to deliver it the distance to give us the foam runs we were looking for. And all of this is not done with a ruler inside the tank. We're looking at it from afar off, and we're imagining where things are landing and where the footprint is making its run and how far it is to everything. That's where the art comes in.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, everything is ready for the attack.
Nobody in the world had ever attempted to extinguish a tank that size. And what I told them is, I said, we're going to get one shot. We have the energy and the resources to try this one time, and one time only.
All right, let me tell you, fellas, all the damn work's done. We got a 270-foot storage tank on fire. This is what we come here to do, is put the damn thing out. Now we're into the talent, and any of you that...
By the light of the roaring fire, Dwight brings his team together one last time to confirm they are ready for the biggest battle of their careers.
People have to understand what their task is at exactly the moment that they're to perform. So you go back over it. It's a way also of kicking back out in your mind what's going to happen, because you're the taskmaster. You're orchestrating this band that has to hit the note at the right time.
Has anybody got any questions? Let's do what we come here to do. Let's go.
They will only have 65 minutes of foam to smother the fire completely. If a wisp of flame is left when the supply runs out, the fire will reignite and the tank could burn to the ground. It would be a failure that would haunt Dwight Williams for the rest of his life.
We had everything on the line that day. This was where the rubber really met the road.
He gave us a signal. We moved our monitor into the tank. Chauncey Naylor moved his monitor into the tank, and then we started our attack.
Once the firefight starts, the actual foam application starts, the phone lines pretty much go dead, and you sit and you wait. I mean, there's no sleep.
"12,000 gallons per minute of water and foam hurl skyward into the tank. Without aid to see into the tank, Dwight has to be guided by instinct. He can only hope the foam cover would successfully build in time.
Keep in mind, you're throwing it, it's landing. It's running up against the back wall, and it's coming back, extinguishing the fire.
With the clock ticking off minute by minute, the crew waits.
It took approximately 11 minutes, 12 minutes into this attack where we saw that we were starting to get flame collapse and getting a bite on the fire. And a real great feeling knowing that, said, hey, this is working.
Flame collapse is basically when it's burning with all of its authority, and it looks like somebody just jerked 2/3 of the authority of the fire out from under it. It just lays down all of a sudden, and you have a very small part of what was burning now burning.
So I walked to the back of the tank, and that's when I realized that that left side over is pretty well knocked down. I mean, things are working.
The high that you're riding, you got this great knockdown very fast, and you're feeling very good, and then 20 minutes later it's still not extinguishing. You're going, oh Lord, is this going to work?
All the odds were against us, more so than any other job that I think I personally have ever been on, whether they were right down the street or offshore 100 miles. The odds were against us on this one.
50 minutes into the attack, the foam supply was nearing empty, and the stubborn fire still surged. The threat of the entire tank reigniting loomed. Dwight's skill would now be put to the final test.
So we had a piece of fire about this big inside that tank. Yeah, we had to technique it out. I was getting a mental picture of what was going on in the tank. I was feathering the nozzle. I was everything that I could think of to put the application that would kill that ghost on that foam blanket. I was doing it. Chauncey was doctoring the nozzle just exactly like I wanted it done.
"13 long hours after lightning struck, the skies above Norco finally go black. History was made. The largest petroleum storage tank fire in the world finally extinguished.
And when the fire went out, we had probably less than 7 minutes of foam supply left. That's not the first time we've got it with the last little bit of foam or the last whisper of dry chemical.
We did it. Was there, and you wish that everybody that you're associated with in your close circles in this industry could have been there with you to experience it, to enjoy it, to see what was done.
There was a lot of people that said we couldn't. And when we done it, just some serious bragging rights, because nobody had ever done it before.
There's something about extinguishing a very large fire that makes you realize just how humble you are in the grand scheme of things, how small you really are.
"65 minutes after the firefight began, Dwight pronounced the Dragon dead. The final chapter closes with an unprecedented victory.
I mean, this was the Super Bowl of fires. You have one winner, Super Bowl. Yeah, they play till one wins. That's what we have. I just thank God that I was there, that I got to participate in that Super Bowl, because it would have been hard to get through the rest of life and not have been there.
You're sitting by the phone, you're waiting for that call that says, the fire's out. We're ready to go home.
A homecoming follows a fire. Nestled among oak trees on 100 acres is the Williams family compound, where Dwight's wife, Ray Marie, his mother, Colleen, his children, and grandchildren live.
A big job and a big responsibility that lies on his shoulders to ensure that we all come home to our families, because he is the caretaker of us.
You know, the families that welcome us home when we come home, and they're not mad because we left, and they understand why we went in the first place. I mean, when we come home from a big job, one of those girls has got something cooking for us to make us feel like we're home. But we can see everybody at one time, and I think that's what's important. Everybody can look at each other's eyes and know that we're all home.
If we're on a job of any size, it's my understanding that my mother or my wife will put all the boys on there to say a prayer for them. It's a nice thing to have happen.
You get them home and get them some rest, because you never know when the next fire is going to happen. You never know.
Between fires, the Williams crew remained dedicated, training and testing the techniques and equipment key to the success of firefighters in this ever-changing field.
We spend a lot of money on R&D. The reason we do it is we're dealing with the protection of life and property. Tell me something that's more important. You see a person burn up. It's not a pretty sight. It's a reminder of what fire will do to you.
The thing that kind of persuaded me that I wanted to be a part of Dwight's team was, one, his success without injury or incident. The second thing is we want to try to contribute and give back to the industry, and I want to be a part of that.
As for the leader in this dangerous job, he continues his search for better methods, more powerful weapons.
I hope that I'm around when we get a big crude tank, for the safety of the boys, as well as the fact that I've got some tricks on crude and depth. I want to see if it works.
The legacy of Dwight Williams will go on past his time here because of his contributions that he has made in the science of firefighting and in the art of firefighting.
I don't want to give the impression that we've made it safe. We have made it more acceptable to do battle with the fire.
Flammable liquid firefighting is a dangerous job. You may go to work one day and you may not come home. We accept those risks.
I like it on the edge. It's sweet on the edge. I think if I had a job where I was doing things and it didn't allow me to be on the edge, I'd be very unhappy.
You slay the dragon, you conquer your foe, you turn the lights out. And that's what we do.
Perfect.